tea. Do you have tea? Do you drink
I
tea?
actually do have tea.
Oh,
Uh, so
yay! That's
what
awesome.
I've done is I've put in a little bit of like CBD oil in my tea.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's been helping me quite a lot to just like relax, calm down, and get into like a easy
Mm,
work. So yeah,
is it?
I'm literally having tea with Michelle this morning.
Oh, I love that. I appreciate that. So we're having tea together because I'm also having some. All right, cool. So let's actually start, and I think we're going to start from the bottom as far as the whole branding concept is concerned. Let's begin with what is branding or what is a brand? Let's define that.
So I think in my experience, right, just being in the creative industry
Mm-hmm.
and sort of
Yeah.
just catch on to like the online sort of space, a lot of
Mm.
people have very weird misconceptions about what a brand is.
Yeah.
And so many of us would then think that, look, it is your logo, right? Right. It's how beautiful your website
Yeah.
looks. And
Yeah.
it could be the business card or any marketing collateral that you might be putting out there. And
Yes.
that is a part of a brand, right? That's not what a brand
Mm.
is. For me, how I always define a brand is that it's every single touch point that any individual comes in contact with. So it could be your logo, it could be your it really comes down to the experience that you offer, right? When I come into contact with who Michelle is, what is that experience? The way you answer your phone when a customer calls in, the way you let someone into your office, the way you
Yeah.
execute your project. All of those things actually make up a brand. So essentially, a
Mm.
brand is a feeling that someone gets when they think about your product, when they think about you as a person, when they come into contact with any marketing collateral. So it could be your website, it could be your logo. That consists part of the brand, but initially it's feeling. And it exists in your customer's mind. You can't
Mm.
touch a brand, you can't feel a brand,
Mm.
and you don't dictate what your brand is. The market does. You might put out
Mm.
something, and based on the experience that you give off to your clients, they define what type of brand you actually are.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, and I guess a lot of people would not look at it that way. So they would rather go, look, let me start by creating a logo, right? And then they call
Mm.
that brand, which is a very difficult and
Yeah.
long way to look at things. Right? So it's essentially, I think, in layman terms, it's an experience that people get from being in contact with who you are, what you do, your work,
Mm.
anything that you execute, what that individual thinks and feels about that specific thing that essentially
Yeah.
becomes the brand.
Mm. I like that. So I've been going through like a little series, and I think personally with my brand, I've been through this quite a while ago. Um, just please take us through differentiating between target audience and a niche, because I
My
think a lot of
manager, my manager just joined and he says he's sending an invoice for this.
you must ask him to email me, okay? Ask him to
I,
email me,
I,
and then each and every single person that's watching, I'm going to open a GoFundMe account.
that's a very smart way to do it.
Yeah, GoFundMe account. You gained a lot of insight for this, so please pay up. Um, so yeah, I think there's normally a misunderstanding between what a niche is and what a target audience is. I'm not sure from your perspective if it is the same thing, but quite a lot of people normally, so I've been doing a series on YouTube, right? And a number of people normally would ask stuff like, I don't know what my niche is, or I want to do A, B, C, D, and E. Can I put them in together? As a brand, like what's a niche, first of all, and what's a target audience?
Look, I think there's very like there's a very thin line between the two. They've got quite
Mm-hmm.
a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, how I basically define the two is that, look, a target audience is a group of people that you want to target, right? Which is
Mm.
sort of decided by your demographics. What age
Okay.
group are you going for? Are you going to do all races? Are you targeting a specific race? Are you targeting a specific sex? Right?
Mm.
Where do those people sort of like reside? Are
Yeah.
they in the suburbs? Are they in the rural areas? What is sort of like their income bracket, or what is their interests? Right? So that for me,
Mm.
we how I define a target market. A niche
Mm.
is coming down to cool. Once you've identified this group of people, what are you
Yeah.
offering them that is different from what your competitors are doing?
Mm.
I think that's where then a niche comes from, because we are all doing the same things. We're all putting out content. There's so many different brands who are producing the same products, producing the same services, right? But
Mm.
what makes a specific group of people attached to an Apple, to a Nike, to a Samsung, right? It comes down to that niche. Because cool, I might be with a friend who is the same age as me,
Yeah.
same income bracket. We're doing this one and the same thing, but we have love for different brands, right? And I think
Okay.
that niche is. So a niche is really coming down to cool. What am I executing, or what am I putting out there, which is of value that is different from my competitors, and how do I communicate that? How do I execute that? On what mediums am I sharing these things? How am I like? What is my brand messaging, right? Because then that's when
Yeah.
it comes to um, differentiate between what a different brand is doing and what you're doing. So yeah,
Mm.
target market is more demographics, age group, like who are you trying to target. But a niche comes down to what are you actually doing that is different, and that captures that target audience and creates a community out of them.
Mm. So they actually work hand in hand.
Yeah,
That's what I
they
think.
do work hand in hand.
Okay. Okay. This makes so much sense. Now, as like a nano or a micro influencer, what normally happens a lot is um, people are trying to break into the market, right? And people will normally go for what everyone's talking about. So I'll use makeup, for instance. The biggest question that I've gotten from a number of people is that they want to talk about X. However, they feel like it's not going to be received mainly because of this. So should I then incorporate X with a little bit of makeup so I can attract a lot of people? And my thing has just always been that if you're going to do X, chances are you probably do not want the makeup. You're not trying to attract the makeup guys, right? You're trying to attract people that are interested in X. But I'd just like you to kind of break that down for us from a branding perspective, as far as once you've kind of niched that down, how do you start bringing up and communicating your niche correctly?
Look, I think the biggest thing for me, in terms of communicating your niche, before everything else, you sort of have to do the groundwork, right? The groundwork is actually defining what your brand is, right? Cool. You might have a niche in mind. This is what I want to do. This is how I sort of want to execute it. But the biggest sort of factor is having your house in order. So what do I mean by that? Cool. You've got to know yourself, right? Who am I? What am I doing? Why am
Mm.
I doing what I do, right? Because that is going to be your narrative. That is going to be your sort of like your messaging.
Yeah.
Once
Mm.
you've figured that out, right? You then have, oh, all right, cool. I've got my target market, and I've got sort of like my niche, right?
Yeah.
And all of that creates purpose. I think purpose is one of the biggest things when you're trying to align yourself in the industry,
Yeah.
when you're trying, like you could literally sit on purpose and be able to scale, be able to grow, be able to attract the right people, because people know why you do what you do, and you've got a specific messaging of how to actually um, go about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to you as the individual or the creative first, before even thinking about, look, how do I communicate my niche? How do you communicate you? How do you
Mm.
communicate Michelle? Right? Because that's where the authenticity and sort of like the purity and the rawness actually comes from. So before anything
Yeah.
else, it comes down to really knowing who you are, what you want to communicate, and from then on, you'll just know how to go about it.
Yeah, I like what you said about authenticity because I wanted to ask you about that as well. And there's a lot of it's almost like a buzzword for I am real, you know what I mean? And and I just really like you to kind of take us through that as well. Like, what does authenticity look like? Because let me tell you, I read This is Marketing by Seth Godin,
Mm.
and he talks about that whole concept of authenticity, about how much it's such a myth, and he's got his own view about that, which is very interesting. But I'd like to know, what do you think about
Look,
authenticity?
I've I don't know if I've always told people I'm authentic. I think people just like pick that up, and I think it's always been based on my beliefs, right? And just putting out work that makes me happy and putting out work
Mm.
that I know how to do. I see a lot of creatives who are number one doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. Um,
Yeah.
to dress the same, trying to put out like the same content.
Mm.
And cool. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with being inspired by someone or something, right? But it's
Mhm.
very different when you are starting to imitate that person or that thing. So for me, like authenticity has always just been about putting out the work that I love, being real. So if I don't have content or I wasn't able to pay my photographer or I wasn't able to buy the outfit that I wanted, I'm not going to post on Instagram. Like, that's just me. I can go a week, 3 weeks without posting because I don't want the pressure of having to go rent out clothes or having to spend when I can't. So those are the things that keep me authentic. So I'm going to put out content that makes me happy, content that I know is really just my life, right? So I don't have to be or create some weird perception. If I'm going to the office, if I can create content from there, I will. If I'm going to a fancy restaurant where I enjoy eating and I can create content from there, I will. But if I'm not within those spaces, then I am basically not going to put stuff out that would make me seem like I'm living this life that I'm actually not, right? And I think the
Mm.
biggest thing about being authentic is also being vocal, being vulnerable, speaking about how you feel, putting out your opinions out there and actually just sharing it with your audience because you can't just be pictures, right? You can't just be
Yes.
video and content. You need to be able to connect with people on a much deeper emotional level. And I think that's another side of authenticity that people sort of like lack because at the end of the day, people buy into people, right?
All
So
right.
if you know my story, if you know my narrative, you are in a better position to actually understand the content that I put out because you know like that's Joe. And when I collaborate with a brand or I put out something that is not really me, you're gonna see it, right? Because you'll know that
All right.
this is not genuine. This is not what
Mm.
Joe. So I think authenticity really comes down to being and knowing who you are, putting out the work that you love, and
Yeah.
pretty much that's it.
I like that. Now, I think being in corporate, you kind of know that when times like these hit, the biggest thing that happens is budgets are going to be cut. And one of the first things that's cut in
Oh,
budget is
Michelle,
marketing.
I can tell you about that right now. So a lot of the contracts that I've had in the last maybe say year,
Mm-hmm.
um, a, a lot of them came through back like this month, last month, just saying, yo, like we can't actually continue with this,
Yeah.
and like it's due to the to the pandemic. So just on that whole budget talk, like when you said it, I felt it because it has affected so many bags.
Yeah. So I've also lost quite a lot of business, mainly because when I left corporate, I started consulting for majority of the companies and the clients that I used to render services to, and I think I lost about 80% of business recently of people literally pulling out their contracts, mainly because they can't afford it anymore, and they're not interested in strategic marketing and kind of sitting down and planning out. Now, obviously that's going to have an impact on the whole influencer industry, and especially people that wanting to come up during this time, and not that it is impossible. However, how do we start communicating value differently? Because I do believe that there is still a certain level, when they cut budgets, they don't cut them completely, like totally out. Yes, we are going to lose some business, but there are guys that will say, cool, I do see value in this, therefore I'm going to plug in, bump the trees up a little bit so that we can at least stay relevant. So as a nano or micro influencer, where do we actually start changing the way we communicate our value?
So, geez, you should actually be paying for this, but
I hope everyone that's watching this, that I'm gonna have a GoFundMe page.
So, as soon as the pandemic hit, right? I think what I sort of started doing was just looking at content and looking at platforms from a whole different perspective, right? A lot of what we've been doing as nano influencers or micro influencers is that we've actually been putting out work generally, right? Whether we are being paid by a brand or whether we're not being paid by a brand, we've always been putting out work. So when Joe is not collaborating with a specific brand, I still put out my own authentic content that people would relate to, that people would still engage and love and learn from, right? And now, because the pandemic has limited a lot of brands to just use their own channels, because now it's even a bit more difficult to get their products and services into their audience, right? One thing that sort of that I've done, and I think would work really well with if you are a micro or a nano influencer, is don't sell your content to your audience, because a lot of people now, right, would then start saying, okay, shit, now we're not getting money from brands anymore. I've been putting on so much work for the longest time, and now I think it's time for my audience to start paying for what I do, right? That's the wrong way to go about it, because your audience is used to always getting your content for free. Right? So imagine if I would then say, cool, I'm not going to put out Twitter threads anymore. I'm going to make people pay for my threads. It would be like, but dude, you've done like 15 threads and you never asked us to like pay for it, right? You might lose a lot of your audience from that. The strategy would be sell your audience to the brand, right? So continue putting out great content, but say, hey, X brand, I'm going to do a thread on CBD oil, right? Wouldn't you guys like to be the main headliner brand? Let me use your product. Let me actually write an article about it and sell that to my audience. I receive 20 tweets per thread and 11 comments. That's my engagement, right? So that's just one way of doing it. So how do creatives and how do nano influencers now work? Look at the brand that you want to work with, do a lot of research on them, and then come up with a way of how do I get this brand into the spaces which is everyone's home right now, right? Do I do it through an Instagram live where I'm having a conversation with them, with someone, and I'm wearing a Simon and Mary hat? Cool. That's me plugging the brand, right? So
or do we do tea with Michelle where we're drinking a specific tea brand?
Right. So sell your audience to the brand. Say, look, X brand, I've got 1,000 followers. I get 500 likes per image and 30 comments. I think this would be a great platform for you guys to plug in. So you're actually selling the value and your engagement directly to the brand, but your audience is still getting the free content. They're not having to pay for it. Right? So I think that's sort of how we need to do it, and just be like right now is really about being as creative as you can, because I think we were all just very comfortable with going to a fancy place, taking a picture, putting it up online, creating. Now it's about who can actually create great content while still being at home, because now we don't have access to the fancy restaurants, we don't have access to the clubs, to the trips, to the flight, right? How are you still being creative and creating content? And it really comes down to what we're speaking about again, being authentic, being real. Because that's what your audience now is going to connect with. Hey, we've never seen a Bonang at home. Hey, we've never seen a JoeHuman at home, right? So how do you still communicate your value to your audience through this time? And I think it's just being more creative of how do you still get your work and brand work to your audience.
That makes sense. I really like that. You mentioned something that I've been finding on a lot of articles, and this is a conversation I've had with a number of people that have always wanted to work with nano and micro influencers, and that's the fact that they have more engagement. Well, that's the assumption that nano or micro influencers have more engagement, and sometimes once a brand invests and they realize, okay, wait, there really isn't much on here. And I think with this time, with everybody on their phones, I'm going to limit them so you don't charge me too much. What are the managers watching? So what are, I think, two things that they can do to increase their engagement on their social media platforms?
So number one, right? Your audience is going to change drastically because now everyone is online. So that clearly most possibly increases more of your engagement, right? But then everyone is now using these platforms differently at different times. So if you knew that, look, my best time to post is 3 p.m., it might not be anymore because maybe now it's at 10 p.m. where everyone is on Instagram watching content or consuming content, right? So the number one thing is do a little bit more research on your audience. Start understanding the different patterns and how are people using the social media platforms that you're on, and when are they using it, and what for? Because a lot of user behavior is changing throughout this time. That's one. Two is being creative with how you execute your content. I've done, I think, two campaigns throughout this lockdown. Maybe like no one even noticed that I was being paid for it, but it's just how I executed those projects. Even though I'm restricted in where I can be, I can't get to my photographer. So it really comes down to that. And just on that second point, now is the best time to scale yourself, because you literally have to be your own production house. You have to be your photographer. You have to be your editor. You have to be your social media manager if you have one. You have to be sort of like your manager, because you are at home. You are alone, right? You can't have access to all these different spaces and experiences. So the best thing to do right now is to upskill yourself as a creative, upskill your photography techniques, upscale your editing techniques, upscale your communication techniques, and that will eventually then fall into helping you grow and build your engagement. Like, read articles, learn a lot, try and figure out where the industry is going to be post the pandemic, because I think right now everyone is stressed about what is happening right now, but no one is thinking about, hey, how is content going to be like post the pandemic, right? How has this affected how we use social media, and what's the way forward for a content, for a digital creator? So I think those are like my sort of hacks to how you will be able to grow your engagement. For me, it's been very easy. I was like, cool, I can't do podcasts anymore, right? What do I do? I started doing more Instagram lives, which everyone else is doing. But you get people that are doing lives and probably just like talking to their friends, and I think really informative. And the attention span on social media is so short. I think right
Yeah.
now, more than ever, people are looking for value, right? People are looking for ways to connect on much meaningful ways. So even conversations like this is worth someone's time, worth someone's data, right? So
Yeah.
I think just understanding that, look, now more than ever, people want value and people are hungry for information. So whatever you
Yeah.
do, if you've got a makeup channel, even if you're doing lives on a specific industry, just be informative and offer value. It's really not about you right now. It's about your audience.
Yeah, I definitely love that because one of the biggest things I've always said is that nothing is for free. Like even if you're watching a live and you're getting value and Joy's asking you is asking to invoice because of all the questions you're asking, the fact that you are here costs you something, it costs me something, it costs the other person that's actually watching their
Yes,
data and their
yes,
time.
yes.
So it's not
Yeah,
always monetary value, but it's your resources and that's a cost.
yeah,
So for us being here and doing this live is a cost for us because there's other things that we could be doing, but we
yeah.
are here. So that's always important to remember. I'm just dropping that for the guys that are watching. Always important to remember that everything does cost you something at some point, and you need to decide what you're going to do with it, especially with this time. I also now just want to find out from you, with point one, you spoke about researching your audience. I think majority of the people don't really know how to go about this. Where do you go? What do you do? Who do you speak to when you need to find out stats and research and get more analytics and data about your audience?
Okay, cool. So the easiest place to go
Mm-hmm.
is for social media analytics, right? They sort of
Mm-hmm.
give you a basic understanding of who your audience is, what are the demographics, when they're most online. But
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, I've come to find out that third-party sort of applications and platforms actually dig deeper in terms of your insights. So there's this website called for.co, so FOHR.co,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been one of their members for I think just over a year right now, and that
Mm-hmm.
platform is so powerful to a point where it tells you things like the income brackets of your audience, their religion, their interests. Like it really digs
Mm-hmm.
deeper into understanding your audience at a much, much wider scale. And it does this for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I think I've just not plugged in my Facebook because I hardly use it. But the insights there are crazy, right? So it's FOHR.co, for.com. I think every NANO influencer, every macro influencer should be on that platform because the insights you get is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's another app, but I think it's only for iOS. I've not seen anyone on Android use it before, but
Mm-hmm.
it's called Command,
That's
and
only iOS.
yeah, and that app is it's quite pricey. You're going to have to invest. I think the subscription is 1,000 rand a year,
Um,
but it is powerful. So one of the features I really enjoy is that it gives you analytics on everything. So things like your best hashtags, why they work, why they didn't work. It dissects your posts in terms of engagement, in terms of comments, why it worked, why it didn't work. It gives you your posting times. It gives
mm,
you the times where your audience is most online, because that's different.
yeah.
I could be online, and it just tracks that. You can add competitor accounts where maybe I can add like your account, and it
Mm,
will throw up all the analytics based on your account, your best
mm,
post times. It gives me updates on why this post did well, why did it do well. So you're really able to dissect and understand how other creators are putting out content, why is it
mm,
working, and what you can basically use from that. So I would suggest that if you are on iOS, please check. If you are on Android, please have a look for it. It's called Command. Um,
mm,
but if not, then I think 4 is a brilliant like brilliant platform. And another cool thing about 4 is you can sort of download a section of your data and it puts it up very cool looking, like sort of like a media kit. So it,
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it'll have like your images on the side and it'll have like all your data. So you can just extract that page and plug it into your rates card or your media kit. And it looks very clean, looks very professional. So you don't have to do the manual work and actually go into your social media platforms and have to type the analytics. So yeah, those for me are like top 2.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. I'd like to also just add that I also think it's important for influencers as a whole, whether big or small, to actually invest in their craft. That means sometimes you will have to spend a little bit of money into getting the things that you want done, because I think sometimes we look so much for all these free things and free whatever and whatnot, and we realize that we could actually move a little bit more faster if we just paid for something and it helped us and we moved on. I wanted to ask you something. You said that you don't use Facebook a lot. I just picked that up. And I wanted you to just take us through kind of deciding the right platform for a brand. How does one go about that? Because, so again, that's my first question. My second question is, can people make money in the streets of Twitter? And if so, what's the positioning? Because I found it rather a bit more dusty there, you know. And having spoken to a number of brands, they haven't been willing to actually invest or kind of pay for someone to promote something that is quite big on Twitter, as opposed to how they will take somebody seriously that is on Instagram or on Facebook. So yeah, 2 questions.
Cool. Sorry, what was the first question?
The first question was deciding which platform to use for a brand. How do you go about that?
Oh, yes. Research. It really comes down to research. So when you're asking the question, do you mean when a brand approaches you, or when you want to position yourself as a brand?
I think when you generally just want to position yourself as a brand, okay. Because I think what I've realized is you're not going to have like a TikTok, Facebook, and all these things, and sometimes it's really not possible, especially if you're busy with other things. So how do you begin to select one, say, cool, I'm going to cement myself in this particular one and work with that?
Very cool. Number 1 is deciding on your industry. I think that's very important, because that already filters down to what social media platforms you're going to be on. So if I'm going to be in, let's say, engineering, or medicine, maybe an Instagram would not really work for me, because that's a platform where people are more interested in beautiful looking things, right? They're interested in aesthetics.
Yes.
So maybe a Facebook or a LinkedIn would work better for me, right? So I think number 1 is deciding what industry you're going into. If you're going to be doing travel vlogs and makeup tutorials, LinkedIn would not work for you, right? It's just one platform. Like, no one is consuming that content there, right? People are consuming that content on Instagram. They're consuming it on YouTube. So biggest thing is industry. You gotta know what industry you're in, because that will start giving you a direction on where you need to be, and also that's where you're gonna find your competitors. 2 is doing research on your audience, and maybe you're starting up. You've got 0 followers. You don't have an audience. You know, how do you do that? How do you do that research? From your competitors, right? Do research on them and look at how their audience is communicating with them on what platforms, because that also gives you an idea on where most of your future clients might come from. So if you find out that, look, a specific brand really does well only on Facebook or only on Instagram, that should be one of your primary sort of social platforms where you're like, oh, okay, cool, because people that are actually interested in this product are on this platform, right? So I'm not putting out work on a LinkedIn knowing that there aren't any travel vloggers who are looking at content like this. They might be, but they're probably sitting at boards of big companies and they don't care about the content they care about, an email or a project, right? So doing research on your audience and knowing where those people are is another thing. Beyond that, just because I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, or I'm on Facebook does not mean that I consume content the same on all those different platforms. So also learning how people consume this the content on these different platforms will actually help you better. So I'll know, okay, cool. Maybe on Twitter, I need to be more of a thought leader. I need to speak more. I need to be more opinionated. On Instagram, I
Something
can't
that
really do
every girl
that,
being
right?
interested.
Yeah, on Instagram, I can't really do that. Why? People don't really care about long, deep captions. You know, they want a great picture with a nice, cool caption that actually goes with it, or is thought provoking. Cool, that's what they want on Instagram. So mainly aesthetics and just beautiful looking content works better on this platform. On Twitter, I could post a picture, but people still want to know what is my opinion, what are my thoughts, right? So beyond just knowing your industry and knowing where your audience lies, also try and understand how that audience actually uses this platform.
Okay. All right. And then my second question was Twitter.
How do you make money on Twitter?
Is that even a thing, and is the market like that broad to make money, or could you use? I mean, like what Essay Girls says now is just you use that as being a thought leader for your needs, but just to communicate, but it's not your main source.
So, I don't really have a hack on how to make money on Twitter. Maybe I should just speak from my own experience. Why are you looking like that? You look like Joe, you lied, Joe.
No, I'm hoping. No, listen, I'm actually hoping you're going to give it to us without saying I'm a skin voice. You sound just like.
So, I think, let me just like a little bit of my Twitter story. I hardly use Twitter. I think I signed up on Twitter at like what 2015.
You're so active though, Joe.
Listen. I've only been active for the last year and a couple of months.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So yeah, signed up in 2015. I literally went on Twitter to just speak to myself because I had like one follower, no engagement. I didn't know what to do on that platform. It was so overwhelming. Most of the time, I would literally just go on to look at what everyone else is sort of like speaking about, and you know, engage, never get a comment back or a like. Like it was literally that platform, and I ignored it. I literally ignored Twitter, and I felt like Instagram was more the platform for me, right? Because I mean, I'm a creative, so I'm visually stimulated. So I was like, cool, Instagram could work. Started doing shoots here and there, putting up images and stuff like that. At the time also our business was just starting to like boom, so we were getting quite a lot of like interviews and radio stuff and gigs and stuff like that. So my audience started growing a lot on Instagram because that was the platform that I was the most active, right? And I started putting up way more content from there on. So with Twitter, what happened? My Twitter journey began when, after this whole branding stuff, a lot of people would like DM me on like Instagram and Facebook and ask me a lot of questions like around branding and brands and marketing and stuff like that. And I'd start responding, but it got to a point where a lot of the questions were very similar. And I didn't know how do I put all these people in like one space where they can consume this content, because I'm answering the same questions in different ways with different people like all the time, and it's starting to be quite draining. And I thought, hey, let me actually like go on Twitter, right? And the funny thing is, the week before, I'd like log into Twitter and I told myself, look, one day I'm gonna post something so smart on Twitter and it's gonna get like 1,000 retweets at least. Like one day I'm just gonna put out something very smart. One day, you know. And So I came back from church. It was a Sunday evening, I think 2018. Yeah, 2018 December. Um, and I just went on Twitter and I was like, how to build a brand, a thread.
Mm.
And I just went on. I literally poured my heart out, everything I've learned in the last couple of years being in the creative industry, stuff that and techniques that we used for some of our clients with our digital agency. And I put it
Mm.
out there and it started getting traction. Mind you, I was on 1,200 followers at that time. I
Sure.
started getting traction, started getting traction. I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is cool. Like 20 retweets, it's very new to me and stuff. And put my phone away, come back, it's on like 500 retweets. I'm like, whoa, you know.
Mm.
And throughout the whole week, my phone did not stop buzzing. It was literally like I switched off my notifications. And that's when it hit me that Twitter is a platform where people are really hungry for value, right?
Yeah.
And people are hungry for information. I think we are in a country or in a continent where we don't have the best resources. We don't have the best access to information. And if
Mm.
you are able to do that and dissect that on these platforms and create value for people, you start
Yeah.
building a community, right? You start building engagement. And that was literally my strategy. I think in the last year, I think now I'm over like 20K followers,
Mm.
and it's literally being built on creating value, putting out insight, putting out information. And
Yeah.
because of that very engaged sort of like audience, because your audience then starts
Mm.
identifying with you as this is the person that gives me information based on this subject,
Mm.
right? You start
Yeah.
building that community. And brands are going to look at that. Brands will see that and see an opportunity to be able to communicate their products, communicate their services, and work with you. So I think, in essence, what I'm trying to say is if you really want to win the Twitter game, be valuable, put out value.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be on branding like me. It could be on makeup, it could be on gardening, it could be on anything that you're really passionate about. Be real about it, put it out there. Eventually, your tribe will find you. Like, if you are authentic and if you are real and you
I love
create
that.
this beautiful community, your people are going to find you. It's going to
Mm.
take time, you know. Someone
Mm.
someone might find my Twitter profile or Instagram profile today and think, oh, this guy just like grew his followers in the last couple of months, but it's taking me years to grab that audience, to grow that audience. So it will take time, but like just be real, be authentic, be consistent with it. And brands are going to look at you and find you and see opportunity to work with you. So that's how I've managed to get paid on Twitter by just because brands know like this guy has got great engagement, right?
Yeah.
I could tweet
Mm.
something and they know that it will get traction. People are going to
Mm.
retweet. There's going to be a conversation, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it really comes down to that. Like Twitter is about offering value, sort of like
Mm.
positioning yourself as a thought leader in your space or the expert,
Mm.
but just
Mm.
really being real and being as simple as you can. Because a lot of the stuff I've put out, like you can literally Google the stuff and find it on
Mm.
on Google, right?
Yeah.
Or on articles, whatever. But
Yeah.
I think for me, what I've done is I've been real with it. How? By adding my experience to it, adding my own knowledge to it, right? The things that I've actually done and tested and tried out that have actually worked and
Mm.
simplified that for anyone to understand.
Mm.
So yeah, look, if you want to win the Twitter game, I think it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to being able to offer value, being consistent, being very authentic, and just being real with what you're trying to communicate.
Mm. I actually like that. And it's very instrumental what you say because for me it was very different. Like I joined Twitter years ago. I think then when it was like an exclusive club, you know. And one of the biggest things how I actually got into Twitter is, how long? It seems like almost 5 years ago.
You're doing
That's when
well,
the
man.
rise. Hey,
You're doing well.
Yeah, I am. I could focus a little bit more, but I think when I joined it, that's when the rise of like young entrepreneurs was there. My first business had been recognized. I was doing interviews. Everything was just moving so cool. And when you get and everybody's like, get a Twitter account, and you get a Twitter account over like a week, you get a couple of people following you, and it works out. And I think over time, it has kind of changed a little bit. That's why I said earlier, they've gotten a bit dusty, but it's interesting when you share it.
Also, I think I actually owe like my Twitter community a thread for this. But while I'm here, Twitter is one of the most powerful, most open source platforms compared to any other social media network.
Yeah.
Because like for people to consume this content right now, right? It's either they're following you and I, right?
Yes.
With Twitter, I can put out content, and even your third-party followers might catch onto it, whether they follow me or they don't. Or they
so
don't.
The growth of what exponential Twitter catches on to the next person, to that person, to their audience, to their audience.
The algorithm is so open, it's so powerful. I think people should like maximize and use it right now while they still can, right? Because it will get to a point where Twitter's like, hey, actually, we also want to restrict people. We actually want to make more money off ads, money off sponsored stuff, right? If let's say, let's randomly say, if Joaquin was an image on Instagram, do you think it would have went as viral?
I'm with you.
So
I'm with you.
Like an open source platform, right? Like your content can reach so many different people from all walks of life. And I think we should just be very mindful of the advantages of that platform. So let's like use it right while we still can.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, Joe, how much more time do you have for me?
Probably like 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. What I need to do, also to everyone that's watching, I need to end this right now. Otherwise, Instagram is going to kick me out, and then I can't save it at all. It's been an hour. So I need to end it, and then I'm going to start another one. And then for about 10 to 15 minutes max, it's just going to be a platform for everyone to ask you questions. Is that okay?
Cool.
All right. So